Dear students, I welcome you to this lecture. It is all about group factor theory of intelligence, and this very theory is given by L. Thurston. We are having certain objectives with us. Initially, we will be having a thorough understanding of what intelligence means and understanding some different factorial theories of intelligence. And then we will be shifting to the broad theory under discussion, that is group factor theory of intelligence. So, let us start with understanding some historical background of the term intelligence. Intelligence as a concept has been the focus of theories, definitions and philosophies dating as far back as Plato. One way to seek understanding of intelligence is simply to define what it is. Sternberg supports two principal classifications of the definition of intelligence: the operational definition and the real definition. So far as operational definition is concerned, it is very much measurable. Real intelligence is one that inquires the true nature of the thing being defined. As with the plethora of definitions of intelligence, there are numerous theories of intelligence. From examining how smart one is to how to measure one's smartness, theories have come and gone, and some have endured to be pondered and pruned over time. How many factors are included there in intelligence too is somehow controversial. Most of us think of intelligence as an overall ability or attribute of a person. That is, we tend to classify people as either bright, average, or dull. Is there such a thing as general intelligence as distinct from specific abilities, or is intelligence just a collection of abilities? Alfred Binet, the French psychologist who has contributed a lot to intelligence testing, saw intelligence as one basic quality. Binet assumed that intelligence was essentially unitary. That is, he maintained that the mind possesses one overriding quality which he believed to be ability to effectively adjust to the environment. In devising his test, he assumed that this unitary factor could be manifested in three ways. It is, number one, as the ability to maintain a definite direction. Second one, in choosing means appropriate to ends. And the last one, in objectively evaluating one's own actions. Charles Spearman, an English statistician, looked at intelligence differently. He devised a two-factor theory. On the basis of his correlational studies, he concluded that intelligence could be divided into a general factor, abbreviated as G, and a group of specific factors like S1, S2, S3, etc. His theory was that G played a part in all intellectual activities, but also that any particular activity was affected by one or more of the specific factors. Edward E. Thorndike, the famous American psychologist, rejected the notion that there was such a thing as general intelligence factor. He formulated that the multi-factor theory exists there. This theory states that intelligence is made up of many independent components, all of which, when added together, form intelligence. Thorndike took the position that a person could be very strong in one factor and very weak in another, and be just as intelligent as someone else who who had the reverse capabilities. A fourth theory proposed by L. Thurston, which is somewhere in between those just presented. According to his theory, intelligence is not just a matter of G plus S, that is general factor and specific factor, but it is a matter of the primary group of factors and one general or G factor. Thurston arrived at this position as a result of his factor analysis studies of intelligence. Today, there are two major schools of thought on the nature of intelligence. The first one, supported by such psychologists as Eysenck, Galton, Jensen, and Superman, believe that all intelligence comes from one general factor known as G factor. The proponents of the other school of thought include Gardner, Sternberg, and Thurston. These psychologists think that there is more than one general type of intelligence, or in other words, that there are different types of intelligences. An interesting note about this school of thought is that there is disagreement even within that camp on exactly how many different types of intelligences there are. Among different theories of intelligence, group factor theory tries to explain the nature of intelligence quite different from the theories of Spearman and E.L. Thorndike. Intermediate between the theories of Spearman and Thorndike is the group factor theory, or the primary mental abilities given to us by L. Thurston, an American engineer turned psychologist, and his associates in 1938. Louis Leon Thurston was a U.S. pioneer in psychometrics and an influential theorist of intelligence. He contributed greatly to the measurement of attitudes and is well known for his contributions to factor analysis. Although Charles Spearman is credited with inventing factor analysis, it was Thurston who first coined the term. Dear students, let me tell you what factor analysis means. Factor analysis is a statistical technique designed to identify and isolate the elements that make up any complex trait. A psychologist involved in factor analysis gives different tests to the same people and calculates correlations between responses on subtests or individual items. When all the possible correlations are made, procedures of statistical analysis are used to find out which items seem to be in clusters and which seem relatively independent. For example, several subtests or items dealing with words may correlate highly with each other, but not at all with subtests or items concerned with numbers. In this example, the statistics indicate that a verbal factor and a numerical factor are relatively independent. As I have already told you that L. Thurston made significant contributions in many areas of psychology, including psychometrics, statistics, and the study of human intelligence. He developed methods for scaling psychological measures, assessing attitudes, and test theory, among many other influential contributions. As already stated, Thurston does not believe in general and specific theories. Thurston's theory of intelligence centered on the existence of primary mental abilities. According to him, intellectual activity is neither an expression of numerous highly specific factors as claimed by Edward Lee Thorndike, nor the expression primarily of a general factor which prevails in all mental tasks, as Charles Edward Spearman believed. He objected to Spearman's emphasis on general intelligence. He felt that intelligence could be broken down into a number of primary abilities. To find these abilities, he applied the method of factor analysis to results from a large number of tests employing many different types of items. One set of items was for verbal comprehension, another for arithmetical computation, and so on. He wished to find a more definite way of grouping intelligence test items than the rather crude item sorting used in the verbal and performance scales of the Stanford Binet and Wechsler tests. After administering a large variety of test material to college students and to high school and 8th grade pupils, he intercorrelated the scores of all the tests. Then he applied factor analysis to arrive at the basic factors. Those test items that best represented each of the discovered factors were used to form new tests. These tests were then given to another group of subjects and the intercorrelations reanalyzed. L. Thurston and his collaborators concluded that 7 primary factors emerged clearly enough for identification and use in test design and construction. As revealed by factor analysis, certain mental operations have in common a primary factor which gives them psychological and functional unity and which distinctly separates them from other mental operations. These mental operations are said to constitute a group A. Similarly, other group of mental operations have their own unifying primary factor and may be said to constitute a group B, and so on. Thus, there are a number of groups of mental abilities, each of which has its own primary factor. Thurston offered this new factor model in 1938. This provides, in addition to the specific factors, for group factors, each of which is responsible for one class of performance. Primary mental abilities were first discussed by Thurston in 1935 and could be described as latent core constructs that can explain nearly all cognitive differences. L. Thurston was doing research at a time when intelligence tests were first coming on the scene and people were arguing between two basic camps. As said earlier, one camp stated that all intelligence was just a reflection of a single general intelligence. Others would believe that intelligence is multifaceted and that you can have higher and lower facets. L. Thurston, while administering dozens of psychological tests, found that when measuring intelligence, there are only a handful of aspects that really matter. For example, he found the following aspects: verbal comprehension, spatial orientation, inductive reasoning, number facility, word fluency, number fluency, associative memory, and perceptual speed. His assumption was very much clear that certain mental operations have in common a primary factor, which is not essentially G, which gives them psychological and functional unity and which differentiates them from other mental operations. These mental operations constitute a group. A second group of mental operations has its own unifying primary factor, and so on. In all, There are 7 such groups which cover the entire range of mental abilities. Each of these primary factors is independent of others. Thurston felt that differences in the results of intellectual tasks could be attributed to one or more of 7 independent abilities. What he felt was that intelligence could be broken down into a number of primary abilities. To find these abilities, as already noted, he applied the method of factor analysis to results from a large number of tests employing many different types of items. One test of items was for verbal comprehension, another for arithmetical computation, and so on. Thurston and his collaborators concluded that 7 primary factors emerged clearly enough for identification and use in test design and construction. The 7 factors identified by Thurston are as: number 1, it is number factor. The ability to do numerical calculations rapidly and accurately. This ability is involved in rapid arithmetic computation and in solving simple arithmetic word problems. It is usually known as mathematical ability. Second one, it is the verbal factor and abbreviated as V. This factor involves a person's ability to understand verbal material. It is the ability to understand the meaning of words. It is measured by tests such as vocabulary and reading comprehension. Number 3, space factor. The ability to visualize relationships. This ability is involved in visualizing shapes, rotation of objects, and how pieces of puzzle fit together. It is the ability involved in any tasks in which the subject manipulates an object imaginally in space. The ability to visualize space-form relationships, as in recognizing the same figure presented in different orientations. And number 4th, word fluency factor. This ability is involved in rapidly producing words, sentences, and other verbal material. The ability to think of words rapidly, as in solving anagrams or thinking of words that rhyme. It is measured by tests such as one that requires the examinee to produce as many words as possible, beginning with a particular letter in a short amount of time. And the 5th one, reasoning factor, abbreviated by the letter R. The ability found in tasks that require the subject to discover a rule or principle involved in series or group of letters. Although it is believed both induction and deduction are involved, it seems that induction is more significant here. The 6th factor, it is a rote memory factor, abbreviated by the letter M. It means the ability to recall and associate previously learned items effectively or memorize quickly. The ability to recall verbal stimuli such as word pairs or sentences. Then comes the 7th one, the perceptual ability, abbreviated by the letter P. The ability to see differences and similarities among objects. This ability is involved in proofreading and in rapid recognition of letters and numbers. It is measured by such tests such as those requiring the crossing out of as in a long string of letters, or in tests requiring recognition of which of several pictures of the right is identical to the pictures at the left. Dear students, Thurston afterwards discovers some more factors, as it is deduction reasoning, abbreviated by the letter D. Ability to use the generalized results correctly. This ability is commonly dealt with in logic. This deals with one's ability to apply a given general principle to a particular situation. The form of reasoning is called syllogism. Then comes inductive reasoning. This ability requires generalization. It is reasoning from the specific to the general. This is the ability which is usually dealt with in logic while examining a series of facts of data to find out a general principle running through them. It is measured by tests such as letter series, number series and word classifications, in which the examinee must indicate which of several words does not belong with the others. Apart from general reasoning, there is problem-solving ability factor. Ability to solve problems independently. Dear students, Thurston's work emphasized different types of intelligence rather than focusing on a single factor of general intelligence, and thus better recognizes the diversity of human abilities. Some intelligence tests, such as the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, have sections that test for some factors, though they might have different names. For example, perceptual speed is called processing speed on the Wechsler's Adult Intelligence Scale. Thurston's assumptions were met with a lot of criticism. His hope of discovering the basic elements of intelligence through factor analysis was not fully realized for several reasons. His primary abilities are not completely independent. Even Thurston, on further research, found that his factors correlated quite well and corresponded quite well to the types of tests Spearman had called for. While Thurston's multidimensional theory at first eliminated G as a significant component of mental functioning, the primary factors were found to correlate moderately among themselves, leading Thurston to postulate the existence of a second-order factor that may be related as G. There are significant intercorrelations among the primary abilities, providing support to Spearman's idea of a G factor, that is general factor. This suggests a hierarchical structure of intellect with a G factor at the top and the primary abilities whose interaction is necessitated the postulation of G at a lower level. Although primary mental abilities or factors were originally said to be functionally independent of each other, it was actually found that they were positively and significantly intercorrelated. After deciding that the first 7 identified factors made up intelligence, Thurston rearranged the existing subtests and devised some new ones. He referred to these sets as tests of primary mental abilities, which he used to investigate the question as to whether there was such a thing as general intelligence. His tests of primary mental abilities were administered to a large group of children, and correlations were computed between scores on the various tests. If there were no such thing as general intelligence, each factor would be independent. However, there were positive correlations among the tests, with some more highly correlated than others, which indicated that primary mental abilities share some common factor. Thurston concluded that each primary factor is composed of an independent primary factor and a general factor G that is shared by all of the primary factors In other words, intelligence consists of both general ability and a number of specific abilities. Thurston therefore concluded that in addition to the primary abilities, there is a second order general factor. Human behavior is varied and complex, and perhaps it is unrealistic to expect a dozen or so factors to provide an adequate description of it. Some psychologists are of the view that Spearman's G is a more accurate description of mental organization in young children, that Thurston's multi-factor description is more correct for adults. They base their suggestion on the fact that the cognitive functioning of the young child becomes differentiated into different skills and abilities as it grows older. To begin with, the intellectual energy seems to be rather undifferentiated. The differentiation gets established between the ages of 16 and 20. This is the time a general ability gets canalized through specific patterns. Garrett found that G factor is more prominent in primary school children, which gradually decreases with growing age. Thurston's theory of intelligence was a major influence on later theories of multiple intelligences, such as those of J.P. Guilford, Gardner, and Sternberg. J.P. Guilford developed a three-dimensional model of intelligence composed of contents, operations, and processes. This model relied on the interactions of various factors similar to the interactions of the correlation of factors in Thurston's theory. Today, many psychologists prefer theories by Sternberg and by Gardner. Both of these psychologists rejected the emphasis on general intelligence. Robert Sternberg put forward a triarchic theory proposing that intelligence embodies a wide variety of skills important for effective living. His observation of Yale graduate students yielded what he believed were components of intelligence. Componential intelligence, that is to solve problems; experiential intelligence, that is adapting creativity; and contextual intelligence, making the environment fit your strengths. Gardner's theory is similar to Thurston's theory in that Gardner believes that there are 7 separate intelligences. Number 1, logical mathematical; second one, linguistic; then comes spatial, musical, kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal intelligences. Although Gardner's multiple intelligences did not perfectly intersect with Thurston's primary mental abilities, both theories support a practical definition of intelligence. Sternberg emphasized speed of perception and the practical application of inductive reasoning as an important part of his triarchic theory of intelligence. Now students, let us see some of the educational significances of the group factor theory of intelligence. Thurston contributed greatly to the measurement of attitudes. In psychology, the Thurston scale developed in 1928 was the first formal techniques for measuring of attitudes. Thurston's theory of intelligence was a major influence on later theories of multiple intelligence, such as those of Guilford, Gardner, and Sternberg. Thurston has been noted for developing a comparative judgment scaling technique. The rank scale can be used to rank all possible feelings related to an issue and to categorize people expressing an opinion based on the rank of that opinion. It is used today mainly in basic research. Again, Thurston held that if the individual wants to perform any particular activity, one or more of these factors or abilities are involved. Some of them are more important than others. Students, let us see what are the latest views on the nature of intelligence. Thurston's theory has been a subject of lot of research. Two types of research have been made in this connection. First, have these primary mental abilities no connection with one another? Is there no G factor amongst them? Second, are these primary mental abilities quite absolute? Are they not further reducible? So far as the first question is concerned, answer has already been given that these are independent of each other, but later some positive correlations have been found to exist between these abilities. It means that there is a general factor also. L. Thurston admits this in a very clear way by saying there is a second order general factor. These positive correlations were more glaring as far as children were concerned. So far as the second question is concerned, a lot of research has been done to determine the absoluteness of these primary factor abilities. Even Thurston and his associates now agree that these are not absolute. These abilities can be further split. Despite the analytical nature of the multi-factor approach, it is still based on a limited conception of intelligence, since little weight is given to social intelligence, mechanical, and to abilities in special fields such as athletic, music, and drama, etc. The splitting of erstwhile absolute abilities has led to another theory called the hierarchy theory, and it is P.F. Vernon who is connected with it. It was, however, J.P. Guilford who first of all split these abilities. Dear students, let us conclude here by making an emphasis on the fact that L. Thurston, an American psychologist and psychometrician, made an enormous contribution to the theory of primary mental abilities in the 20th century. Thurston in 1938 discovered that primary mental abilities emerge from 7 different abilities. Thurston performed many tests on people with similar intelligence quotient scores and figured out that they had different types of primary mental abilities, which further proved his theory. The primary mental abilities Thurston's theory found were verbal comprehension, reasoning, perceptual speed, numerical ability, word fluency, associative memory, and spatial visualization. As dear students, you might have understood that Thurston then, after making more research, finds some more primary mental abilities. Thurston's theory had a major impact on the theories of J.P. Guilford, Gardner, and Sternberg, which all help us to understand how different a person's abilities of intelligence can be. It was all for today, hoping that you might have enjoyed the lecture. Thanks.